Hello. I'm very thankful for the second session we are having now. And just like I mentioned in the first section, the book of Daniel starts off with Daniel's life as a prisoner. When we think of being a prisoner, we first think of jail or doing hard labor while not being able to eat well. These are what we think of first. But you will be able to see that the actual prisoner of Babylon is very different from what we think a prisoner is. So we will start by reading the word. Let's read Daniel chapter 1, verse 3. And the king spake unto Ashpenaz, the master of his eunuchs, that he should bring certain of the children of Israel, and of the king's seed, and of the princes, children in whom was no blemish, but well-favored, and skillful in all wisdom, and cunning in knowledge, and understanding science, and such as had ability in them to stand in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the learning and the tongue of the Chaldeans. And the king appointed them a daily provision of the king's meat, and of the wine which he drank. So nourishing them 3 years, that at the end thereof they might stand before the king. Now among these were of the children of Judah, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, unto whom the prince of the eunuchs gave names, for he gave unto Daniel the name of Belteshazzar, and to Hananiah of Shadrach, and to Mishael of Meshach, and to Azariah of Abednego. But Daniel proposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's meat, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested of the prince of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. Now God had brought Daniel into the favor and tender love with the prince of the eunuchs. And the prince of the eunuchs said unto Daniel, I fear my lord the king, who hath appointed your meat and your drink. For why should he see your faces worse liking than the children which are of your sort? Then shall ye make me endanger my head to the king. Okay, we have read up until verse 10. So as I've mentioned before, we imagine that being a prisoner meant being given hard labor, going to jail, not being able to eat well. That's what we imagine. But the true Babylonian prisoners in the Bible are written about in verse 3. Amongst the children of Israel, those with a royal or noble bloodline, and among them of those who were beautiful and gifted in all aspects, who were the ones who were chosen to live in Babylon, in the palace where King Nebuchadnezzar lived. So, those amongst them who thought, I am smarter than any Jew, I am beautiful, I can do anything. It was an environment where you could lose yourself and easily become corrupt. So truthfully, if the average person lived in the palace or was even able to see the palace, it would be a great joy for them. But to live there for 3 years, they would be eating the same food and drinking the same wine that the king was eating and drinking every day. So these people had every condition to live happily, and they were able to live in the palace. So that is probably why some people thought, hey, I'm wise, I'm beautiful, I'm smart. And this is why I think they would have been easily captivated by their own selves. And while living at the palace, they would have thought, I'm happy. I originally wouldn't have had this wisdom, but as I live in the palace with the royalty, especially in this huge empire of Babylon, at the Babylon palace where King Nebuchadnezzar lives. On one side, it's the start of an exciting life. However, Daniel and his 3 friends, they tell the prince of the eunuchs, "We will be corrupt if we eat the meat and the wine of the king for 3 years." We will truly become dirty people. However, is it possible for them to just decide and say, "I don't want the delicacies of the king," and just to say they won't eat it? Can they decide that? Would it be possible for them to just say, "I don't want to drink the wine," and not drink it? But they were guided by a strong power, even under the powerful reign of the king of Babylon. So they were able to ask the eunuch like this. Verse 8. But Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with a portion of the king's meat, nor with the wine which he drank. This means that they didn't just simply decide, "I'm not going to eat the king's meat. I will not defile myself." It's not just something they determined. Of course, here it says "proposed," along with another word, "requested of the prince of the eunuchs." This meant that since he could not decide on his own to not eat of the king's meat, he made a request to the prince of the eunuchs to not allow himself. And the prince of the eunuchs said, "Hey, if you guys don't eat the king's meat, you'll look haggard compared to your fellows. And on the day you stand in front of the king, if you look skinny and pale, not only would you die, but I would die too. And I'm very scared of King Nebuchadnezzar. I can't do that." So, the prince of the eunuchs strongly disapproved. However, how did they seek grace and the approval from the prince of the eunuchs? This is the aspect that we need to contemplate on carefully. Now, throughout my life, this is what I thought. Well, I live in the countryside, but I can go to a good college if I study hard. I can live a happy life, can't I? I can refrain from drinking and refrain from smoking. So I was confined within my thoughts, and I thought I could do it all. However, when I actually lived in the world, my friends would smoke and say, "Hey, are you a man? You aren't a man if you don't smoke." I heard that, and without me knowing, I eventually started smoking. "Hey, you have to have a drink to become a man." "Oh, I don't drink." Just being determined like this and failing was the actual world. And as I lived, all I have to do is not drink or smoke. But I realized that the world did not work that way. That is why in Ephesians chapter 2 it says, "According to the customs of this world, man has followed the desires of the heart of the flesh, and in the end will receive wrath." That is what the Bible says. I did not want to live like this, but when a strong desire, yearning, and the worldly customs dragged me, there is no person who can win over that. Even Daniel knew that his determination of, "I will not eat the king's meat or drink the wine," would not follow through. That is why he sought grace from the prince of the eunuchs. Because the things of this world cannot be tamed with our own determination, if we don't seek in front of God, and if God does not extend His grace to us, then we would have no choice but to live like that and die. Only those who know how weak of an existence we are the ones who seek God. Now, originally, Daniel thought, if I have this kind of heart, God will judge me. The Hebrew meaning of Daniel is God will judge. So he was one who feared God in that way. And he was imprisoned in Babylon, and his name was changed to Belteshazzar. Now, just like that, among Daniel's three friends, there was Hananiah. And his name in Hebrew means the Lord is gracious. And Hananiah, the name with that meaning, was changed to Shadrach. Shadrach was the name of the moon god. So receive the power of the moon god. I am Shadrach. So the people who should have lived by receiving the grace of God lived with Babylonian people who served the moon god, not God. And Shadrach was the god where people tried to receive the moon god's light and become more beautiful and wise. And that was Shadrach. And a little bit before, renaming Daniel as Belshazzar was another god's name. It meant the one who receives the favor of the gods of Babylon. So the one who receives a lot of love from the gods. You are not Daniel, you are Belshazzar. You are the one that grows receiving the love of the gods of Babylon. So as Daniel's name was changed like such, and Hananiah became Shadrach, and the third friend, who was Mishael, which originally in Hebrew meant who can be like God. Mishael meant who in the world is like God. That is the meaning of Mishael, but his name was changed to Meshach. So Meshach means Shaki in Arabic, and this is the goddess of beauty, the god of beauty. So they would say, hey, Meshach, your beauty is given to you by the god of beauty, Shaki. So surely they had received the love, beauty, and happiness of God, but now Mishael's name was changed to Meshach, which meant the beauty that I received is from Shaki, the god of beauty. So they were living with these changed names. Now also, Azariah. In Hebrew meant, the Lord is my strength. So Azariah, who had that name, his name was changed to Abednego, which meant the servant of Nebo, filled with the wisdom of the god Nebo. Azariah originally lived by the help of God, but this god Nebo has given me wisdom. That is why you are Abednego. So they were called by their changed names, but when they lived in Judah, they were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. But they came to Babylon and they were told, Daniel, you are now Belshazzar. What? I'm Belshazzar? No, I'm not. I don't want to do that. It wasn't a situation where they could refuse just because they said they were not going to do it. Hananiah, you are Shadrach. No, I don't want to be Shadrach. My wife, so in her neighborhood, she was called Kyungsun. She was called Kyungsun by her friends, mom, dad, and relatives when she was young. But one day, she went to elementary school, and they were doing roll call, but they didn't call her name. So she said, teacher, you didn't call my name. Oh, what's your name? Kyungsun Lee. Wait, you aren't on my roll call list. After they called everyone, there was only one person who didn't answer. Their name was Chi Nam Lee. Oh, aren't you Chi Nam Lee? You're Chi Nam Lee. You were registered with the Social Security ID as Chi Nam Lee. So you're enrolled as Chi Nam Lee on our roll call. Teacher, I don't like the name Chi Nam Lee. I want to be Kyung-soon. And she cried. But her name was enrolled as that name. So from then on, her name was Chi Nam Lee. When I first heard that name as well, I thought, oh, isn't that a guy's name? So Chi means to reign, and Nam means the remaining man. So maybe she reigns over men, and I teased her that way. But she would say, I don't want to use that name. And even if they said that, if you come to Babylon, your name will be changed, and people will call you by that name. So at first, for the first 1 or 2 months, you may feel awkward, but if you live with that name for 1 year, 10 years, or 30 years, of course you'll get used to it. So, when Daniel and his 3 friends lived in Judah, people called them by their original names, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael. But in Babylon, they were called Belshazzar, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. It may have been awkward for 1 or 2 months, but just like you get used to it, as 3 years passed, then the heart of God will help me, that heart also starts to disappear. God isn't helping me, but the God Nebo will give me wisdom. Their hearts became contaminated with that heart. Who is like God? They lived with this kind of heart before, but that heart changed to, oh, Shaki, the God of beauty, will make me beautiful. So in truth, if Daniel decided his heart, please do not allow us to dirty ourselves with the wine and meat, then what does that mean? In everyone's heart, you think, hey, I'm still smart, I'm beautiful. If you keep this heart and keep flowing towards it, you'll start believing that you truly are a beautiful and wise person. And then who would you start believing in? You would start believing in yourself. By continuing to believe in themselves, they start to serve the gods of Babylon. And in the end, their heart changes to serve idols. So the one who serves God, the one who has a clean and pure heart thinks, God is my God. He is the one who gives me wisdom. He shows power through me and is my help for everything. He is my shield. The one who has this clean heart, as they started to live in Babylon, they think, oh, God is not the one helping me. It's the beautiful God Shaki. Or it is Nebo who has given me wisdom. They live with this changed heart. And they fear the fact that they are being dirtied this way. But most people think, I'm wise. They have fallen in vanity, and they cannot see that they have been dirtied. Now, Daniel, especially Daniel, lived in Babylon for 70 years. As he lived there for 70 years, he saw that he had no choice but to be dirtied in his heart. So he sought grace from the prince of the eunuchs. And that is the truly pure heart. So the important thing is, who is the one who seeks mercy? Here, Daniel seeks for the prince to not be dirtied, from the prince of the eunuchs. And that is written in verse 8. But in verse 9, now God had brought Daniel into favor and tender love with the prince of the eunuchs. So he not just, please help me not be dirtied, but in the Bible, it says that he actually started to receive grace. So to what kind of person is grace given? In other words, it is grace and mercy. It is mercy that is given to the one under the eternal judgment. So in Daniel's heart, if he believed in himself and thought, I'm wise, I'm a person who can master anything. If I live like this, with this heart to believe in myself, I will ultimately be defeated. So the person who has that destruction in their heart, that person is the one who can seek grace. Since I came to this palace, I'm comfortable. I'm wise. If they keep falling into vanity like this, then they don't need to seek any mercy. So, the thing that the prisoners can easily forget is their original position. And also, they lose the heart that God will judge. And they just fall into this. Now, originally, Daniel means God will judge. The result of trusting in my own wisdom and living life can't help but to be receiving God's judgment. When you have this heart, that is when you seek mercy. This means that judgment came to the hearts of Daniel and his 3 friends. If I live as a prisoner in Babylon for 3 years, I have no choice but to go through eternal destruction. When you have that heart, then you will seek mercy. Everyone in this world wants to become smarter. They want to become more wise. And amongst the people, they think, what's the issue with that? I have the power to do that. No one thinks that destruction will come to them if they live thinking like that. But this is the reason why Daniel is wise. Eventually, when I go to Babylon, leaving God, and serve the Babylon gods, the moon god, the wisdom-giving Nebo, the god of beauty Shaki, then I will have no choice but to be thrown away forever. This dirty heart, this truly evil heart, I cannot come out of this heart. This was Daniel's heart. That is why, now of course, when he went to Babylon, the Babylonian people, of course, called them Belshazzar, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. But in the deep ends of their hearts, they could not throw away the heart to seek God. So, in more specific terms, Azariah means, like I said earlier, the Lord helps me. That is how he was called. But coming to Babylon, his name was changed to Abednego. Once again, Nebo was a god of Babylon. Nebo gives me wisdom. Nebo fulfills me. My heart eventually changes to this heart. So the strong power of Satan pulls me through the Babylon king and these gods, and if God does not help me, then I am not able to come out of this. God, please help me. So God gave this very fundamental heart to Azariah. For a long time, living as prisoners in Babylon, when they were forgetting that heart, that is when Daniel said, hey, guys, if we keep living with this heart, serving these idols, and serving the Babylonian king, when we lived in Judah, we lived with the heart, who is there like God? In the deepest corners of their hearts, they had this heart. If it were not for God, where would we find happiness? God gave us this kind of happiness, but that heart is now disappearing. In truth, Christians will only be happy if God gives them happiness. Also, when the Word enters our hearts, we are the happiest. Other than the Word, nothing in the world can make us happy. Who is there besides God? Who can give us happiness? They were living with that heart. But as they lived in Babylon, they thought, I can be happy even without God. And this world is the same way. All I need is money. Money, wealth, and honor will make me happy. Our hearts change implicitly with that heart. Daniel and his friends' hearts were also falling in that direction. I'm happy even without God. Isn't having a nice house and traveling, eating, and drinking to my heart's desire happiness? Your heart is changing in this manner. And if God does not help at this point, you have no choice but to be corrupted and to be destroyed forever. God, please help me. Azariah had this kind of heart. If God doesn't help me, then I cannot come out of this. And that is why you would seek mercy. At that time, God poured His mercy upon them. God gave me grace. He gave me mercy. That was Hananiah. The heart was planted in their hearts. Hey, who is as gracious as God in this world? However, in Babylon, there's nothing called grace. You only reap as much as you have achieved. But the Bible said, and David said too, even if I don't work, but He doesn't remember my sins, and He has covered my sins, that kind of person is happy. So I become happy by receiving grace. It's not a world where I live by my own strength. However, in Babylon's world, you believe that you will be happy if you live according to your own strength. These days, especially women who think their faces aren't pretty, they think they have to get plastic surgery and become beautiful to be loved. They believe that money will make them beautiful. And that is what the Babylon people say. Who is beautiful like Shaki? In this world, women need to be beautiful. Who will love you if you aren't? So they flowed towards that heart. Daniel and his 3 friends learned that the world of this heart was deserving of God's wrath. That is why man's duty is to fear God in their hearts. If they leave that heart, then that is the most painful thing. That's why I want to say one more thing. In Jeremiah chapter 2, verse 19, it says this, Thine own wickedness shall correct thee, and thy backslidings shall reprove thee. Know therefore and see that it is an evil thing and bitter that thou hast forsaken the Lord thy God, and that my fear is not in thee, saith the Lord God of hosts. So if the heart to fear God is gone, and God is thrown away in my heart, while living in Babylon, the people of Judah get further away from God, and the heart to fear God disappears from their hearts. This is the most evil and most dirty thing. How painful is it to live without God? In the land of Judah, they didn't live painfully because they had the conditions to serve God well. But coming to Babylon and serving in the palace, in the deep part of their hearts, they have left God. So of course, they would like the things of the world over God, and they live with happiness that is something other than God. Then, unexpectedly, what can make me happy besides God? They were able to feel deep in their hearts how painful it was to live for the things other than God. God, I don't need to eat the king's meat. I don't need the wine. Leaving you is my biggest agony. Deep in the heart, there is a heart to look for God. No, wine is actually something that gives happiness to people. We thought that the joy from something other than God would give us happiness. Daniel felt that this was great agony. And he could not come out of the agony of the things that were not of God. When he sought God with this heart, God bestowed mercy on him. His strength was not what brought him out of that. He received the help of God and received grace. That is why Hananiah's name means God is gracious. I cannot get out of this myself, but God had mercy on me, and He poured His grace upon me. With that heart, Daniel and his 3 friends lived. That is the blessing that God has given Christians. Many people left God and believe in their own strength as they live in this world. That is very foolish and evil. The person who knows that receives the love of God and lives a happy life in their heart. That's why Mishael's name means, who can give me happiness besides God? But when his name was changed to Meshach, it meant, Shaki, the God of beauty, gives me happiness. There is no one besides Shaki. When their hearts were being contaminated like this, God saved their hearts that were dying. He brought them back to life. Because of the king of Babylon's power in Babylon, they were dying. However, because they sought mercy and grace, God saved him with His power. Really, Christians are people who had no choice but to die in the customs of the world. However, Jesus washed our sins, and He saved us through His blood from death. So God's amazing power saved me, even though I was dying while living in Babylon and had no choice but to receive eternal destruction. They were people who served God with the heart, I am truly happy through God. So no matter how much the king of Babylon's power suppressed them, through God, they received the great grace of God and were able to come out of that. And this is recorded in verses 3 to verse 10 that we have read today. The beautiful realm of God is written in Daniel chapter 1 from verses 3 to 10. As I saw this word, though I am a person also who cannot help but to live serving idols and myself in this world, but I am so thankful for the grace of God that saved me. Okay, we will end here today. We'll see you at the next session. Goodbye.